This episode of Bringing Bias in from the Cold. I'm Bronwyn Williams, a commentator and facilitator on bias and diversity. And with me today is Fusena Aziz, all the way from Ghana. Welcome, Fusena.
Thank you so much, Bronwyn Williams. How are you doing?
Doing very, very well. We are operating at different time zones, but you and I always make this work. Fusena, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in your everyday life, regardless of COVID-19?
Yes, Fusena Aziz, as you rightly said, from Ghana, West Africa. I'm the Executive Director of Fusaid Global. We are a non-profit that's focused on women's development advocacy. We focus on domestic violence, maternal mortality, girl child education, basically all things that affect women in society. On normal days, I do public speaking. I attend some conferences to add my own touch to the fight against all forms of abuses at all in society, and also to contribute towards growth in society. So in a nutshell, this is me right here, and I'm really happy, excited to be given this platform to speak to you, my very good friend, all the way from Australia.
I know. And just to give some context for people who watch this video, Fusena and I met on Facebook. Initially, I think it was just one of those random connections, and somehow, even though, totally different cultures, we're different, quite different age groups. I'm well and truly old enough to be Fusena's mother, but we have just connected, and we've had this wonderful relationship now for, well over 12 months, probably 18 months. I often, because of the time difference, it's early morning here in Australia, I will get a message from Fusena early in the morning. So I might be sitting in bed, texting away, and we're catching up with all the things that are happening. But one of the things that I love about the interconnectedness of our world is that we can understand that despite all the things that make us different to each other, there's so many things that are the same. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to ask you, Fusena, to join me in this conversation around bringing bias in from the cold, because I know that bias doesn't just affect white people in Australia. Bias affects people across the world, regardless of their culture and their national heritage, the language they speak. So how would you define bias?
All right. First of all, you're right. Despite and regardless of locations, I think when it comes to bias, it's just one thing that affects everyone, especially considering the fact that we have different, let me say, traditions. We have different beliefs and understandings. There's religion, there's culture, there's just so many things that makes us different. But then the word bias plays a role in almost every aspect. So per my understanding, I think when we talk about bias, we're looking at, if I should say, making favorites amongst a group of people, or creating that atmosphere where one person is either favored or not favored against or in favor of the other. So at the end of the day, I could see a positive outcome as a result of a bias, and it could be in favor of me or against me, but in favor of the next person. So it's not exactly restricted to positive or negatives. I think there are just different views and opinions and outlooks to the word in general.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I had a conversation with a woman here, Maz Farrelly in Australia, and her idea was that bias had a lot to do with our experiences, and she understood bias in that terms of, well, we have this experience, we might have the same experience a number of times, and we draw some conclusions from that. I liked what you said about traditions, because even though Australia wouldn't see Australia as a very traditional country, we're quite a young nation as such, particularly for those of us who are white Australians, I know that I grew up with certain traditions that I wasn't even aware of until I got older and started to think about, why do I do these things? You know, I had the privilege of being able to work with asylum seekers on Nauru and start to mix with people who were not white. And that's when my own biases, which I didn't realize I had, started bubbling up. And I felt a bit afraid of these people who were different to me, not because they're going to hurt me, but just because they were different. And I was able to then go on and go, okay, I don't actually like that about myself. What can I do about it? And then changed, because I think it's about understanding that our biases are always there, but we can choose to work with them or have them just prove quite destructive in our lives and in our relationships. Have you got an experience around bias that you would like to share, either of understanding about your own biases or being on the receiving end of someone else's bias in perhaps not a positive way?
Yes, right. I think when it comes to bias, people have so many reasons and their own explanations that they can give to being nice to people or not being nice to people, to offering services to a person or to not do that at all. And personally, I would say that the times that I have been on the positive side of bias has been basically probably because of if it's, I don't know if it's okay to say that their opinion of who I am, their perception. I have actually nurtured myself to kind of serve as a role model. I know I'm still learning. I always say that it's every day is another opportunity to learn new things and to contribute towards growth. And somehow, at the moment, that seems to be an identity I carry. And so the times that people have been good to me, or the times that people have offered to assist or to help have been because they believe it is for a greater good. For most projects that I have done, I have had to personally make some sacrifices. And of course, you and I can understand that day in, day out, people see the things that we do. Day in, day out, they see the sacrifices we make, the risks we have to take to make sure other people are okay, other people are comfortable. Of course, as an advocate, there's a lot you can say about making sacrifices. And so basically and simply, people see that every day. So sometimes when I find myself in places where under some circumstances I may not be favored, I happen to be favored because of these records they have of me or because of these things that they see that I do, right? But then I have not personally experienced a negative, I have experienced, probably not kept them much in thought, some negative experiences, but I think I can talk for some people that I know personally who have not enjoyed, bias because of one or two reasons. And I like to, first of all, mention gender. There's just this perception about, first of all, about men being the stronger vessels, physical strength. And so sometimes in some cases, even in our workplaces, when it comes to times that we have to probably lift some stuff,
physical work,
arrange or physical work, precisely, it is expected that the men are stronger and may have to do that. And when it comes to probably cleaning, where even though in some cases there's the cleaner, it's also actually ideally seen. And in fact, most places that I have worked in, that I have met the cleaners, they have been women. So there's just this traditional expectation placed on gender roles. And so at the end of the day, I have people who complain that, okay, so because I'm a man, I'm expected to do this. And also we get women also saying, okay, so because I'm a woman, you don't think I can be, say, an electrician. Because I'm a woman, you don't think I can be a painter. It's something I can do. And I think this is one positive aspect of feminism, if I should chip this in
Yeah.
quickly, because it has made more women, especially, to come to understand and to accept that not that anyone can fit in any role at all if they truly and really want to, regardless of their sexes or their gender. And so I have come in touch or across people who have experienced some negative sides of bias, and of course some people to have experienced the positive side. And I think if I have to touch a bit on the positive side, I think the aged is one, which is a very good thing. Sometimes, especially in our public transport, personally, I have made some sacrifices. You find yourself having to sacrifice your seat for someone who is much more aged, not necessarily because there's a rule that instructs you, a law or rule that instructs you to do that, but because ethically and morally, you know, this is just okay, and it doesn't take anything away from you.
No.
You know, sometimes I think not too long ago, I met this man, and he was quite aged, and he had these loads stuff that he was carrying. I just I wasn't heading his direction, but I didn't think twice, you know, before even helping him. I just thought it was just okay to do that, especially since I'm, you know, still younger and probably may have the strength that he won't have. You know, so I think sometimes there's negatives and there's positives. We may not experience the negatives at all, but definitely we come in touch with people who have, or people who still do.
Yes. I want to pick up on 2 points that you said there. The first one was, I found that interesting that you commented about men sometimes commenting, but I'm expected to do this. As women, we are aware, like of what you had said about women starting to understand that they can do just about anything. You know, obviously the really physically heavy things are more difficult, but yes, they can become a painter and an electrician. But the flip side to that is that often men are expected to do things that they don't particularly want to do, or expected to fit roles that they are expected to do particular roles in society that they may not actually feel happy doing. They would much prefer to be also, like here in Australia, we've got a lot of men now who are nurses. 50 years ago, you would never have seen a man being a nurse, because that was considered something that women do, and that men should, it wasn't quite manly enough for a man to be a nurse. Whereas, you know, some of the male nurses I've met are some of the best nurses that I've come across. So yeah, the whole gender bias thing does actually work both ways, and I'm really glad that you brought that point up.
Yeah, and I think, like you rightly said, sometimes they are not exactly excited about these expected roles, but they just happen to find themselves in the environment that make it seem as though they are mandated to perform these roles. I mean, I have come across men who just enjoy cooking, you know, and traditionally people see cooking to be something that women are supposed to do, or women are naturally expected to do. But I have tasted some meals prepared by males that I've actually enjoyed more than my own cooking, you know. Yes, in some cases. So I think sometimes that is the disadvantage of some expected societal rules or cultural or even traditional expectations. I think these are the things that sometimes puts people in some unpleasant situations that they are not exactly in control of.
And I think too, it means that sometimes people are not able to use the skills that they naturally have. Like my middle son is a fantastic cook. My goodness me, he's creative with his cooking. And in Australia, that's not something that is odd any longer. But a generation ago, or maybe 2 generations ago, it would have been. Of course, you had your chefs from your restaurants were nearly always men, but for home cooking, like my son, even though he works outside the home and my daughter-in-law works inside the home looking after the children, she is not a good cook. She says that. And Tom comes home and does all the cooking because he loves it. And I think it's wonderful, isn't it? So that, as you say, our traditional roles, which is where we form our biases often, don't actually have to get in the way, and they can allow us to, really develop ourselves with our natural giftings.
Yes, I think if we have to touch a little even on the negatives, I think there's just this thing that people fail to say, but it's actually a reality. Most employers would be more interested in hiring males than females, unless there are roles that they think women or females will perform better. And most times the reasons, first of all, could be the fact that, how we are naturally created as women, the monthly visitor, and also the 9 months and 9 months pregnancy period, and also to go into maternity leave. And most employers can't afford to have to wait till women are ready to come back to work, and so they see that as a disadvantage, and sometimes prefer to employ males than they would employ females. But I think one positive bias is when we look at, for instance, in Ghana, we have the maternity leave. Of course, I believe this is available or practiced in so many other parts of the world, where women are allowed to take a specific period of months off after their childbirth to, take care of their children and heal, and then get back to work.
Yes.
They are still, even despite the leave, are still, given their salaries. They're still paid. You get it. And I think this is one positive bias we ought to look at, because at the end of the day, you do not get to still serve the company, but at least you're being given something to earn, to urge you to help you take care of your home. And I think this is one thing we can't overlook. We may look at the negatives, we may look at gender itself placing some negative biases or playing some negative biases, but I think there are some positives to it. And sometimes we just can't help but accept things the way they are. Other times we hope that maybe with time we'll be able to change a few things. I understand that last election year, some political parties in Ghana here had to cut down costs on the sale of the price of forms, for parliamentary elections, the forms that they have to pay to apply or to register their intentions. I understand some political parties had to cut down costs. And I'm actually yet to verify this, but I believe there's almost some ounce of truth in every rumor or anything at all that you hear.
Yes.
And if this indeed turns out to be true, I think this is one positive thing we can not overlook, because, and I believe it's basically because when they look at the unemployment rates and the unemployment situation in the country, women seem to be the most affected by unemployment. And so if cutting down the cost of forms is one way by which they can get more women to participate or to take part in leadership roles, I think that is a good thing. And if it is true, then I would urge that every individual or person or any party at all, any government that find themselves in any election year may want to consider this, to encourage more women, to make it easy for more women to want to be part of the decision-making processes. I believe that also there's really a lot that women can bring to the table once they're given the opportunity. So I think it's just okay that we always bear that in mind and have that as part of the plans that we have to do.
Yeah. Look, I'm finding it fascinating as I'm listening to you, Fusena, because we've talked about all different things, but this is quite a different conversation to ones that we've had, because some of the things that you've said around maternity leave and women's entitlement to work, here in Australia, we'd go, oh, duh, yes, of course. But I'm just loving listening to this, because it would be very easy for me to jump in and say, but women should be able to. But, you know, we're over here, we're really saying that this must happen for women. And I think this is one of the issues that we had, that I see around bias, is that, and this was something that I learned when I was on Nauru working with the Nauruan locals, because the white Australians had this unconscious attitude that because they came from a developed country and they had a university education, of course they knew better. And when I sat down with one of the Nauruan women and asked about that, they said, oh yeah, we know that about you people, but we just accept that. And I found that quite shocking, because I didn't like what I saw in myself and my friends. And I think as I'm listening to what you're saying and how you see things in Ghana, it is actually different to how we see things here in Australia. And what you're saying, I would say, is probably similar to where we were 50 years ago here in Australia. But the reality is Ghana is Ghana and Australia is Australia. And yes, there are things that are similar, but there's a lot of things that are different. And I think what I'm loving about what I hear you say, it's about accepting often the situation that you find yourself in and then working with it. And I think one of the things that has happened too many times with developed nations like Australia, we've seen ourselves as the great white gods. We've got all the answers, you know, and we'll go over to Africa or, you know, some other country and tell them what to do. Whereas if we actually listen to what people in other countries, in other nations, other cultures are saying, there's so much that we can learn. Yeah, and you don't have to be like me. And I don't have to be like you. And I think that's one of the wonderful things in life, isn't it?
Yes. I think it's always okay that once in a while we try to pick a few points from other countries. I think that is, no matter how independent you are, you can't really be all-knowing in decision-making processes. I think there are just a few points. If we have to even look at the current pandemic that's kept all of us indoors. I mean, it's been an interesting couple of weeks, and you know, the world went to sleep and woke up to a totally different world. It's as though we are strangers in our own world, you know. But when you look at the manner in which various countries are taking the steps they are taking to ensure that this pandemic is resolved, I think this is one thing we can say we are all actually doing together. This is one thing we can say that almost everyone is trying the same thing. We talk about the lockdown. We look at the social distancing. We look at the self-quarantine. We look at the self-isolation. We just, you know, the frequent washing of hands thoroughly with under running water with soap. And, you know, I can talk of so many things. And this isn't happening only in Ghana. And it of course isn't happening only in Australia. This is happening like almost everywhere. So I think whether we like it or not, there will be the time that we definitely will have to learn from each other and then adopt the same strategies to fight the common enemy that we're all facing today. It's good. It's kind of interesting.
It is. And I loved what you just said about we woke up and found ourselves strangers in our own world. And I think that's probably the best description of this time that I have ever heard. So thank you for that. I'm going to hang on to that. So I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I find as I'm doing these different conversations, I'm learning from people each time. And it's just been a wonderful privilege for me, Fusena, to have you on. So as we bring this to a close, is there anything else that you would just like to add?
Of course,
or a tip?
There's a lot I'd like to add. You've been there for me from the very first day. I mean, I have reached out to you several times about, you know, the projects we have for Fusaid, some of our initiatives, and almost every time you be like, this coach I'm still yet to meet. I just love the fact that we've been able to build this bond, and somehow it's just okay. We have the professional bond and also the friendship, because I'm able to check on you. I'm able to receive messages as well from you. I really appreciate you being there for us. And we are still not sure if we'll be having this year's edition of the Fusaid Women's Conference because, of course, we had our own plans. I mean, you and I, we had our own plans last year for this year's edition. But I mean, whatever the outcome, we are still sure that someday we'll meet and someday we'll be able to do much more greater things together. I appreciate this opportunity, like talking to you right now, and trusting that you can actually interact with me on this level. It means a lot. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Fusena. So this brings this episode of Bringing Bias in from the Cold to a close. And so until next time, this is Bronwyn Williams.